Please explain on the relationship between the 6th, 7th, and 8th consciousness.
Some of you probably read in this book that I think it's Dropping Ashes on the Buddha, I think, that Zen Master Yong Dam. First, actually, that's from this scripture, this mind only. There is several different words for that, I think, scripture. Yushik, mind only, or consciousness only. So it's kind of a Buddhist teaching theory that humans' consciousness can be divided into 8 or 9, actually. So like a sixth sense will understand, like eyes, ears, eyes consciousness, ears consciousness, nose consciousness, mouth consciousness, all these, six senses, right? But then the seventh consciousness means like, that's also translated into English, something like a discriminative consciousness. So it's about like a like and dislike, or correct or not correct, right and wrong. So all this is discriminative consciousness. And then eighth consciousness, which is nickname is like storage consciousness. So which means it's like a computer chip. So whatever you see, human beings see or hear, maybe from even your past life, all will actually store in that eighth consciousness. That's why it's called the storage consciousness. So Zen Master Yong Dam introduced that the eighth consciousness in a brilliant way. Like, for example, when you are chanting, that's a good example that you chant Kwansen Bosal, and then that means actually you are using actually sixth sense, like your mouth, you hear the sound, and sometimes you're thinking, that's a sixth sense. And then, but suddenly during the chanting, you start, like from nowhere, this a piece of bad memory pops up in your mind, right? You have no idea where it came from. And then you just start to keep thinking about it. It's usually involved in our 5 desires: food, sex, sleep, and maybe fame and money. And then it just pops up from nowhere. That's can be said, your eighth consciousness, like a storage consciousness. So often you even don't remember when you saw that, when you heard that, or when you experienced that, but that was stored so that pops up. Sometimes he said in dream that appear, where, we don't know. So that's from eighth consciousness. So it's interesting because he said during chanting, you experience that this all consciousness start fighting. Because this is a memory popped up, but actually you understand that this is chanting time. So you want to return to this only chanting, but this you just dragged by this memory or this thinking from eighth storage consciousness. Then what you do, that your mind now start fighting. I have to just focus on chanting, but it just your mind keeps going to this piece of memory. So that means like a seventh consciousness, like a discriminative. Oh, this is like a thinking during the chanting is bad thing, right? You're judging. So I have to come back to this moment. But you cannot really go with that. So now the sixth sense, seventh sense, and the eighth sense, they are fighting. And the Zen Master Yong Dam said, so fortunately, we have ninth consciousness. And this nicknamed as Buddha nature. So at the moment, you have this strength that you can just, break up all this fighting and then just come back to this moment. So that's how actually, Well, I try to read this scripture, mind only. It's extremely difficult, philosophical, and a lot of difficult words. But when I read what he explained in this way, I could completely connect. So this is about human consciousness, theory. So, and also we all probably experience that. Yeah, and so Zen, I think it is very simple but very clear. If you know, like last time Taebong S님 said that, like someone asked about the question, and then this, what was that, like it's about Zen, style, and he compared to like a rocket, right? So if you don't know how to fly, a rocket, it's useless, right? It's not really fast way for you to get to what you wish. But if you know how to fly, then that's an extremely fast way to get to this moment. So then, like, you just hit the floor. That means you just become one with this situation. And then you don't really need to understand this all difficult theory or the explanation about this nine consciousness. Of course, if you are interested in, if you are able to understand all those terms, it will be also great when you can explain to people who need. Yeah. You're welcome. Yeah.
Is it possible to be one with thinking?
What are you asking the question now?
Like we're practicing a lot of time, like be present.
Yeah. So I'm asking you, Itai, what is that asking the question to me right now? Don't know. But before that, your thinking already became one with your action.
What do you mean?
What was your question?
Like if we can become one with thinking.
Right. You have done it, but just you don't believe it. When you make a question, let's say that's from your thinking, but you don't think like that's from my thinking. You were just doing it, right? You were just making question, but you don't explain, I'm making this question. You were just asking. It's like very spontaneously. So that means actually to explain that moment was your thinking and your action was becoming one. You don't think about, I'm making this kind of question. So that's why I asked you first that what is asking the question? So our practice is to find that. What is, doing this, right? And then if that becomes, there's many names for that. Only don't know, just do it, primary point, right? But it's even names. When you are just doing it, like making the question, your thinking, your action already became one. Yeah. I hope that helps. So I read one interesting story recently. The Zen Master Yong Dam in China, about like 7th to 8th century. His story, very short one, I think maybe couple in our Kongan book, if you ever read that. One night he went to his teacher, Chen Huang, Zen Master, just for some conversation. And it was time for him to leave his room. His teacher actually told Yong Dam, well, Yong Dam, it's time for you to leave. It's a little too late now. And then the Yong Dam was bowed to teacher, and he was just about to leave the room. He just actually stepped out the room, and it's all the time. So outside it's already late night, so it's like a pitch dark. So and he just turned and said to the teacher, "Oh, outside is so dark." And then the teacher passed on him this some small lamp. And as soon as he took it over, the teacher just blew up the flame, and it became black out, pitch dark. And then at the moment, Yong Dam got big breakthrough. There is the story in Kongan book, you probably remember. Anyway, this Zen master, how he became actually a student of this Zen master Chen Huang, and actually eventually he ordained. He was living on selling rice cake before he became a monk. So imagine that that's all the time in China, right? But his teacher Chen Huang was quite known to the Zen practitioners, but he still wouldn't go out of the temple, only stay in the temple and merely show up only for something necessary. So most of people couldn't really meet him because he never go out of the temple. But this Yong Dam, when he was a layman, because he was in the village, he was selling this rice cake, and he was actually also offering to this Zen master, Chen Huang, this rice cake. In the story, every day he offered 10 pieces of rice cakes to this Zen master Chen Huang for several years. And something interesting, always this Zen master Chen Huang, next day when he returned this bowl to the Yong Dam, always he remained one piece of this rice cake. Always one. He didn't eat them all, but just he left one in the bowl and then returned to the Yong Dam. So one day, Yong Dam suddenly got, why? He never thought about that, but one day, when your mind is ripe, sometimes it's just very, very normal, like things and routine, but suddenly you got some question, why, right? So he, next day, he went to, again, offer the rice cake, and then, of course, there was one piece of this rice cake was in the bowl. So he asked the Zen master Chen Huang, why do you always return to me one of the rice cakes I offered you? And then Chen Huang told him, well, those are anyway from you. So what's the problem that I gave you back? And upon hearing this, Yong Dam got some kind of intuition, like of the deep meaning. Not breakthrough in his mind yet, but something struck his mind. Oh, that's originally from myself. So the teacher was just giving it return to him. Well, I mean, you probably already got some meaning of that, like we all have it already. So then the teacher's job is usually just help you to find it out, discover it. Something that you already have. So Yong Dam was quite kind of inspired and wanted to search a little more. Then he asked Chen Huang that, is there anything a little more that you can give me, some kind of teaching? And then Chen Huang told him, living at your home is kind of a little narrow, cramped. But if you actually become monk and come to temple, your world will be wider. So then actually he soon moved to the temple, and he was ordained. And then he became monk, and then just vowed to practice with his teacher, Chen Huang. Well, sometimes that happens, like, I'm not saying that being ordained is always the best for everyone, or some kind of a crucial key to practice, but for some people, it might actually work better. I heard even Zen Master Musangsa actually told various students different things when they asked him if they would become a monastic or not. Actually, some students I heard that actually were not recommended. Actually, the first thing he used to ask is actually, do you have siblings? Do you have brothers or siblings? And then how's your parents' situation? So actually, when I also, one of the first questions I asked Zen Master Musangsa was about that, because a big deal for me was actually my parents, right? So we had a very good relationship, and I knew that Korean parents really devote themselves to support children, at least in my generation. Now probably too. But then, because I knew that how much they had to work hard to support me and my siblings, like leaving home to become a monk was really a big deal for me. That was one big issue for me. But then I asked Zen Master Musangsa, then I have this dilemma, and then he actually was positive for me to become monk. Like I sometimes shared my story. Like he asked me, if you become monk and then practice hard, and then function as a monk very well, then like 9 generations of your family will go to heaven. True. I mean, he told me. I know it's a little kind of, it can sound a little weird, but that's what he told me when I was a hengja. And yeah, I couldn't really connect with the answer at that moment. But then later, I started kind of finding I think the true meaning behind that. Because that's actually some saying in Buddhism that actually if you, please don't take wrong. Maybe this saying is only for the monks and nuns who need some encouragement, who knows. But there was an older saying in Buddhist teaching that actually if you become monk, your whole family or 9 generation will go to heaven. I have heard that even before Sungsan Zen Master told me. So he told me that, and then later I started like maybe 10 years or even more than that when I visit my lay family. Then, okay, what's the heaven? If they find out the true meaning of their life, like kind of reflect on my life, then that means actually my path is working to help them to find out their true life. So, well, we all Zen practitioners understand what's heaven and hell. So, if my family members also got it, yeah, they can go to heaven. Well, actually, quite a few of my family members are living very worldly life. Well, it's not good or bad, but often I thought if they really can connect with this kind of teaching, it would be wonderful. So, well, that's my interpretation, that when Zen Master Musangsa said, if you work, practice hard, become monk, and function well as a monk, then 9 generations of your family will go to heaven. Makes sense. I mean, but so far, my Dharma power is not powerful enough. Because many of them are Well, maybe they are doing very well as Christians. So, but if I visit my family, then often, I was actually surprised when they started talking about their lives. We hardly talk about each one's life in a way that what's the meaning of life. We never talk such. We have very good relationship, but always like to talk, just on the surface to be happy, right? You don't really go deep in.
Yeah.
So they trigger that what's the meaning of life? Are you happy? We don't want make each other too serious. So, but then I go one time, I go twice, and sometimes I visit my family. They want to talk about that. Even they're Christian. And my mother never talk about that. But someday, soon after my father passed away, we got only private in a room, and she told me, I really don't know what life it is. But your father now passed away. Why am I hungry still? We never had this kind of conversation. So it makes sense that if your practice becomes strong and kind of clear, it's very natural those around you are influenced by your actually practice. So then that meaning can be extended to that actually heaven. Well, when do we have heaven? When your mind is very clear. That moment is heaven. When your mind is struggle, desperation, complaint, that's the hell, right? So, since then it started making sense. So I shared this while I was talking about the Zen Master Yong Dam. Another part of his life was, so he was practicing hard in the temple where his teacher was, Zen Master Chen Huang. And then for several years, he didn't see any progress in his practice. He felt about himself. And then he started having some kind of complaint. Why my teacher never give me deep teaching about this some essential of mind. So one day he and one of his Dharma brothers decided to move to other temple or to practice with another teacher. And then Yong Dam went to Chen Huang, and then he asked him that he would soon leave. And Chen Huang told him why. Then he said, well, I feel like there's no progress in my practice, and you never give me any teaching of essential of mind. And then Chen Huang told him, what? What do you mean I never gave you? I gave you every moment. When you bring me tea, I drank it. When you brought me meal, I ate it. When you bowed to me, I received and I bowed back. There's no such a moment that I didn't give teaching. Every moment I was giving you teaching. That really struck his mind so strong. He got actually the first breakthrough at that moment. So these ordinary things, daily life, was teaching. Just do it, responding to the situation, to the person in particular relationship. Some of you are probably working in some kongan nowadays. That's about like a relationship. That's about some situation. What's the teacher's job in the Chonang? The student brought tea, drink it. Brought meal, have it with probably appreciation. And bow, then they accept bow back. So anyway, that's one story about this Zen Master Yong Dam. just I want to share. Is there any other question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
We say that everything is created by mind alone. So how can we escape this closed circle and relate to outside?
Close to the circle?
Like it's kind of, we might invented everything also, everything we're talking about. It's just invention because it's also created by mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is a good question, probably from a Kongan also. I don't want to give you the answer. But so in Huayan Sutra, Avatamsaka Sutra, the core teaching of that Avatamsaka Sutra, Huayan Sutra, is, as you said, everything is created by mind alone. That phrase. And then there is a question, so what did make mind? Right? So if you find that, then you can probably find the answer for that. Yeah, there's a lot of occasion like relate to that teaching word. Everything is created by mind alone, which means your mind makes everything, your world, everything. Then what made mind? So there's also one story that one sutra master who was very famous in such era, he was giving this, he was actually a Huayan Sutra master, Avatamsaka Sutra master, and finally he closed with this praise. So everything is created by mind alone. Then one young student stood up and asked him the question, so what did make mind then? And the sutra master couldn't say anything. So I'm going to ask her during interview.